So have you ever heard about someone just losing their bank account? Not because they bounced checks or missed payments, but because the bank decided they didn't want their business anymore? That's exactly what's making headlines right now. And it's a bigger deal than most people think. And it's not just about one person or one company. It's about whether banks should be able to drop customers over politics, beliefs, or even just how risky they think you are to their reputation. And here's the thing. Sometimes it's not as simple as you broke the rules, so you're out. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and what I'll explain later might surprise you. So stick with me, because understanding how this works could actually help protect you from being in the same position someday. And before we go further, I'd love to hear from you. Do you think a bank should be able to refuse someone just because they don't like what they stand for? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to see how people feel about this. And while you're here, if you enjoy learning about how money and policy affect your everyday life, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future updates. So, here's what's happening. President Donald Trump has claimed that two of the largest banks in the country, JPMorgan Chase and Bank of America, refused to take over $1 billion in deposits from his businesses after his first term ended. He says JPMorgan told him to move hundreds of millions of dollars in just 20 days, and Bank of America wouldn't even take the money in the first place. According to Trump, he even reached out directly to the CEOs, and still no luck. Eventually, he says he had to scatter the money across smaller regional banks, 10 million here, 10 million there, just to find somewhere to put it. Now, whether you agree with him politically or not, that's a massive amount of money to be shuffling around, and it raises a huge question. Are banks refusing customers because of politics, or is it just that some clients carry too much baggage, financially or reputationally, for the bank to want to deal with? The current administration is siding with the first option. They believe this is political discrimination, something they're calling debanking. And that's where the executive order comes in. The White House is working on a rule that would make it illegal for banks to deny service purely based on political beliefs. It's not just about big names like Trump either. Over the years, conservative groups, certain religious organizations, even cryptocurrency companies have claimed that banks wouldn't work with them because of what they represent. If this order is signed, regulators could fine banks, force them to change their internal policies, and even discipline executives if they find evidence of political bias in their decision-making. But banks and many people inside the industry see it differently. They say, look, banking is about managing risk. That's not just about whether someone can pay their bills. It's also about what's called reputational risk. If taking you on as a client could cause bad headlines, upset shareholders, or attract regulatory scrutiny, you might not be worth the trouble. And let's be honest, Trump has had a share of financial and legal issues over the years, including bankruptcies, lawsuits, and now criminal convictions. For a big bank, that's a lot to take on, no matter who you are. You see, this headline test matters. It's not officially written into the law, but it's part of how banks decide who to work with. A client who comes with controversy can cost more than they're worth. Regulators might keep a closer eye on you. Other customers might threaten to leave, and the media could turn it into a PR nightmare. From that perspective, refusing a high-profile, high-risk client might look more like smart business than political bias. Now, some people point out what they see as a double standard. These same banks have been fined in the past for money laundering, sanctions violations, and other serious issues, yet they still work with foreign oligarchs, massive corporations in questionable industries, and clients with far less transparency than Trump. So then, why turn them away? Well, for critics, it's about optics. Dropping certain clients makes the bank look principled, while keeping others doesn't get the same public attention. And that's where it gets tricky. If banks are making decisions based on who will make them look good, or at least not make them look bad, then ideology can slip in without anyone openly admitting it. That's exactly what Trump's executive order is trying to stop. It would even remove reputational risk from the list of acceptable reasons to refuse a client. But if you take that away, you might also be tying the hands of banks that genuinely want to avoid being involved in shady or dangerous activity. Another thing to keep in mind is that this debate isn't new. Back during the Obama and Biden years, regulators pushed banks to be more cautious with industries like payday lending, firearms manufacturing, and cryptocurrency. The idea was to cut down on money laundering and fraud. But critics say that instead of targeting individual bad actors, banks just started avoiding entire industries, a process called de-risking. And once you start cutting off whole categories of customers, it's a short step to cutting off individuals or groups that make you uncomfortable for political or social reasons. So then, what does all of this mean for the average person? Well, you might not be moving around hundreds of millions of dollars, but the principle is the same. Your bank has the power to close your account, often with very little explanation. And while that's rare for everyday customers, it can happen if you're in an industry they see as high risk, if your transactions trigger compliance concerns, or if your public profile starts drawing unwanted attention. This is why it's a good idea to maintain relationships with more than one financial institution. Even if you love your current bank, having a backup account somewhere else can be a lifesaver if the unexpected happens. It also helps to keep your records clean, avoid transactions that could be misinterpreted, and make sure you respond quickly to any request from your bank for information or documentation. And also, be aware that laws can change. What's considered okay for a bank to do today might be different in a year or two, depending on who's in the White House or what Congress decides. If Trump's executive order goes through, banks could face penalties for turning customers away over political beliefs. But if a future administration reverses it, those protections could disappear just as quickly. And besides, there's the bigger picture. This isn't just about Trump or even about politics. It's about trust in the financial system. When people believe banks are playing favorites, it erodes confidence. And when banks feel they can't manage their own risk because of political pressure, it creates instability on their side too. That tension is not going away anytime soon. What's more, this could spill over into other parts of your financial life. Think about insurance companies, payment processors, even crowdfunding platforms. If one major sector starts getting regulated for political fairness, others might follow. That could open the door to new protections or new conflicts depending on how it's done. Now, you might be wondering, is there a simple answer? Honestly, no. On one hand, no one wants to be shut out of banking just because of their beliefs. On the other hand, forcing banks to take on any customer, no matter the risk, could backfire. Somewhere between those extremes is a balance, but figuring it out will take time and probably a lot of court cases. So yeah, the next time you hear about someone being dropped by their bank, remember, it's rarely just one reason. It's a mix of money, reputation, politics, and timing. And sometimes, what the public hears is only part of the story. The rest happens quietly in boardrooms and compliance offices, far away from the headlines. And speaking of stories, I'm curious. If your bank suddenly closed your account tomorrow, what would you do? Let me know in the comments. I think it'll be eye-opening to see how people would handle that. And if you found this helpful, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss more discussions like this. Because the way things are going, the relationship between politics, reputation, and your money is only going to get more complicated.